I am Kathaleena Edward Monds. As you can see on the screen, I am the founding director for the Center for Educational Opportunity, which is a research center and now outreach center located at Albany State University. We've been around for about 6 years, and we're happy that we were the recipients of the Housing and Urban Development Grant. And we're excited also because this grant has afforded us the opportunity to really engage a unique population of our citizenry in this conversation around housing. And forgive me, but I just realized I need to make a correction on my slide. Tonight's session is about real estate and not entrepreneurship. Forgive me. And for the person, since we are recording, Kathaleena is actually going to make that change. So thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. And thank God we are all home ownership. We are all human, and my sincere apologies for that oversight as I was chatting, and I know that I stopped sharing my screen. I am going to reshare my screen, and we're going to do this again. So forgive me in that oversight. So now you should see the words home ownership on your screen. We did a session a month or so ago on entrepreneurship, and we're delighted to have this really great conversation around home ownership. And there's some great videos that we'll be sharing with you as well. And so again, for about 2, if not 3 months or more, actually, we did a kickoff in the fall of 2022. But during this time, we've had these really awesome dynamic speakers that you see on the screen. Tanita McKnight is an expert in the area of entrepreneurship. In fact, she was our previous speaker. Adrian Lance Lucas did an amazing job on the area of budgeting, because again, we recognize that the value of being able to be in home ownership is, again, getting your budget together. And entrepreneurship, there are persons who are into the housing space and being able to engage in housing because of the work that they do as entrepreneurs. And then finally, Jennifer McReynolds has really done a great job in terms of investing, once again, because we see these entrepreneurship, budgeting, and investing as kind of inputs, if you will, to becoming a successful homeowner. And this evening, we're going to be graced with Rashonda Muldrow, who also did an amazing job in our first or so iteration on real estate and housing. And she's going to, we're going to have her undivided, we're going to have her presence this evening, where she will singly deliver. And so some of the previous presentations, we've had the pleasure of having all 4 speakers, 2 speakers, 1 speaker. And so our aim is really to get the information out. Every session is being recorded. Every session will be hosted on the Albany State University YouTube channel, so that those persons who are unable to meet with us at the time and the date that the event is actually featured, we want to avail them the chance to be able to enjoy and participate and in the session. And so that's why we were here. And then you can see there's this host of sessions we've had. And as I mentioned 2 months ago, and then last fall, we had our kickoff. And so these are the subject matter areas in which we have engaged. And the group of ladies that I just showed on the screen before really have been our subject matter experts and really had a great time with an amazing audience. So again, as I share, another thing I want to bring your attention to is that there's a QR code in the upper right-hand corner of this slide, and I'll show it again on the very final slide, because this the QR code is it will lead you to the evaluation, so that I am able to collect data on the value addedness of these workshops, so that we can provide a report to our funder. And so as you see on the screen, this program is funded by a grant by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, in partnership with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs for the HUD Housing and Financial Literacy Grant. And again, this it's a 2-year program, and it hopes and we have been able to provide comprehensive, evidence-based, results-driven programs designed to improve the financial well-being of our community constituents. And so I say the word community because while Albany State University is located in Albany, Georgia, in the southwest quadrant of the state, our university actually services about 23 counties in our surrounding area. And so, since we've been hosting these sessions, we've had people from throughout our service area and throughout the United States. We have people from the Carolinas to join us. And so, we're excited and hope that more persons will join. And in closing, before we have Ms. Muldrow come to speak to present to us, this is actually Fair Housing Month, and we're excited about that. I went to the kickoff on April 11th by the Housing and Urban Development in DC. That had an amazing kickoff. I went to that, and I've invited all of my students as a part of the grant to attend this upcoming event on April 26th, which is next Wednesday. Building an equitable future housing policy conversation with college students. And we are looking forward to having our campus community involved in that. And so here we have it. Those of you who are not familiar with this process, you simply just take your cell phone, go to the camera, and then if you focus your camera on that QR code, it will actually pull up the survey, the evaluation that we'd love for you to complete. And what you'll see is there's a drop down and it has a host of sessions. And so obviously today is April 20th, and we want you to be able to complete that evaluation for that session. So Kathaleena is going to stop with my commercial, and Rashonda Muldrow, I'm going to pull up your slides. Just give me one moment while I get your deck ready, and we will proceed. And again, we are hoping that others join us, because I have seen the slides and I know there's a lot of good stuff to be shared. And so, Miss Muldrow, please confirm that you can see the slides.
Yes.
And now we should be in full mode. And forgive me, but I think I have to go back to the beginning slide. Forgive me. How's that?
Yes.
No, there we go. How's that?
That's good. Yeah.
Thank you. Take it away.
All right. Good evening. I am Rashonda Muldrow. I'm with the Real Estate Concierge, and I'm excited to be here this evening to present home ownership. And not only home ownership, but a little bit of information in regards to HUD and how we got to where we are today with home ownership. Next slide. So just a little bit about myself and my company. The Real Estate Concierge is located here in Albany, Georgia. We're a local minority-owned boutique firm, and there's a difference between, of course, the bigger firms and the boutique firms. So we're a small boutique firm. We started this company in 2018, and our mission is basically to provide an excellent experience in purchasing a home, or if you're an investor, to take away the aches and pains of finding that property or great investment for wealth building purposes. And that's what we try to provide top-notch service in all that we do. Next slide. So just a little bit about myself. I am an Albany native. I graduated from Albany State University with my bachelor's degree in management, and I had the opportunity to go on and further my education and receive my master's in business administration from Nova Southeastern University. And I had the opportunity to live there, experience the beautiful campus, receive my degree, and then I came back home. So once I came back to Albany, that's when I pursued a career in real estate. And this is my 15th year in the business. I'm really excited about what the business has afforded, the opportunities that this business has afforded me. And I look to pursue, to pour into other agents and give them the same success or even more. And that's my goal as a broker in this profession. Next slide. Okay, so today we know that HUD is sponsoring our grant, but I wanted the HUD grant is sponsoring this program, but I wanted us to know a little bit about HUD. What exactly is HUD? And so if you click the slide, it's going to give us a little bit of information about HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. Just did it. Is it not?
Yes. So would you like for me to go back to the slide deck? Can you not see my screen? It's on my screen.
No, I can't see it. Not like I did before.
Okay, give me one more. I know what I'm going to do. Just bear with me. What I will do is, in lieu of sharing my PowerPoint, I'm going to share what's called the screen, which I think affords us the opportunity to see everything.
Yes, that's the first one.
Thank you.
That's the slide. Okay. So the Department of Housing and Urban Development was created by President Lyndon B. Johnson. And basically, this came around the time where the country was in a bit of political unrest. And of course, around the time that Dr. King passed and all of that. And this was President Lyndon B. Johnson's initiative to basically bring in a program that would make sure that America's housing needs are met, sustained, and improved, and also to enforce fair housing laws. So we're going to look at that a little bit more in the presentation, just so we can know what some of the things that why this department of the government is important. Some of the major programs that HUD provides that we receive the benefits of, they manage the mortgage and loan insurance through the FHA program, and 90%, well, I would say 85% of the loans that people get, they are FHA loans, and mainly FHA loans are the lowest down payment required. They have the lowest down payment requirement, which makes them most appealing to borrowers. HUD also provides the community development block grants, and that's another grant we're going to look at in this presentation to help communities with economic development. And it's very important, especially in this area where you have groups that are underrepresented and minority groups who may not have the resources and abilities to participate in some of these job opportunities, housing programs, economic ventures, and all of that. The CDBG grant provides opportunities for those communities. The Home Investment Partnership Act block grants to develop and support affordable housing and low-income residents, and the Albany Housing Authority here in Albany and other housing authorities around Albany have also taken advantage of that Home Investment Partnership Act. They also provide rental assistance in the form of Section 8. So if you have individuals who may not afford the full amount of their rent, then you have these assistance programs that come in and pair in with those individual tenants and go in on a portion of their rent. They also provide public or subsidized housing for low-income individuals and families. They provide homelessness assistance, and there's a program on here that we'll look at as well because our area has received funding for that particular program. And there's also fair housing, public education, and enforcement, which is very important being that this month is Fair Housing Month. Okay, next slide. So that's just a little bit about HUD. In this next slide, we're going to look at the history of HUD and some of the things that they have achieved in their long tenure. Like I said before, President Lyndon B. Johnson signs the Housing and Urban Development Act in August 10th of 1965. And we're going to take a look at him and what he had to say about this particular program in this link. Now we can't hear it.
And we must, in this decade, bring all of these strengths to bear effectively so that we can lift off the conscience of our affluent nation the shame of slums and squalor and the blight of deterioration and decay. We must make sure that every family in America lives in a home of dignity, in a neighborhood of pride, and a community of opportunity and a city of promise and hope. This legislation represents the single most important breakthrough in the last 40 years. Only the Housing Act of 1949 approaches the significance of this measure. And years to come.
Should I proceed? Continue?
Yes. Yes. At the
I
minimum.
believe
Okay. So as we can see from this
legislation in our history. The House.
Okay, so as we can see from that particular instance, this took place just after him signing the Housing and Urban Development Act into law. Basically, he wanted to make sure that every American had the opportunity to experience fair housing, to home ownership, and to not be discriminated against. Of course, this did not end discrimination in housing, but it was one of the first steps towards that. So this is a big deal in our American history when he signed this deal. And after that, if you look at the timeline, following, he got a lot of kickback. So this was in 1968, just after that, a couple of years after that, it was enacted. Riots in major cities started following the assassination. Just everything kind of started shaking up things a bit. And the Housing Act of 1968 was developed as well. This was Ginnie Mae. You might have heard from Fannie Mae, but this is Ginnie Mae. So this was to expand the availability of mortgage funds for moderate to income families using government guaranteed backed loans. And that government guaranteed mortgage backed security is important because that's the government stepping in saying, okay, Mr. Banker, you give this loan and the government there is there to back that loan. Okay, so let's take a look at this particular video as well. We'll watch this in its entirety because it's dealing with the fair housing.
I've been looking for a product like this my whole life. And we were all putting it on, looking in the mirror, and we're like, oh my God, this is a freak.
Okay. And we'll watch this one before.
On April 11th, 1968, the Fair Housing Act was enacted into law, recognizing that property rights should not be abridged because of discrimination based on race, color, national origin, or religion. Resistance, harassment, and violence are unfortunately hallmarks of the pursuit of equal housing in our country. For generations, access to housing of choice didn't mean access for all. Where you lived was often dictated by the color of your skin.
There was a thing known as white flight. If there are 2 or 3 African Americans in a block, then it's time to go. Real estate brokers that were taking full advantage of those fears, of that flight. That's how many of the communities were changing block by block through the course of the summer.
But the population was discriminating. You know, the neighborhood, whenever a person of color came into a neighborhood, people begin to sell, they panic, you know. It was awful, you know.
In the mid 70s, I was showing a Black couple through a home, and I got a phone call from a neighbor who used very offensive language and told me that if I sold that house to that person or that group, that they would do physical harm.
We acknowledge our industries and associations' early opposition to fair housing and recognize those individuals and organizations that helped change our policy. For example, in 1947, African American real estate brokers formed the National Association of Real Estate Brokers with a clear fair housing purpose.
And that certainly started to give me a platform necessary to not only talk with my realtor brothers and sisters, but to work even more diligently within the community which we came from, which was denied opportunities of property ownership.
Many people have given much of their lives to advance the cause of fair housing, often risking more than just their livelihoods. Despite continued opposition across the country, the Fair Housing Act declared a national policy of fair housing by prohibiting discrimination based on race, color, religion, and national origin. Changing attitudes and behaviors proved to be difficult.
And the community organizations attacked us that first year. Breaking our office windows, demonstrating in front of the office, coming into office. There was a network of ladies that were at home that would call and jam our telephones. Stop selling in our neighborhood, click up. Stop blockbusting in our neighborhood, click up, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Progress has been made. The Fair Housing Act was amended in later years to prohibit discrimination based on gender, disability, and familial status, and to increase enforcement of the law.
So when we looked at it and said, now, wait a minute, this makes good business sense to be a positive person in the real estate market and following the fair housing law, that we should get out there and do something to prove and help our members know that they're doing the right thing.
When I started out, I remember having people say, well, I want to go to this neighborhood, but I don't want to go to that neighborhood. And it seems like over time, I mean, we're talking 30 something years, I don't get those questions asked. Where I live, everywhere, there's people, all sorts of race, creed, color, age. It's a true melting pot.
But many communities remain segregated, and housing discrimination based on race, religion, and more still exists. Only half the country prohibits discrimination in housing against the LGBT community, and HUD reports that the highest proportion of complaints involve discrimination based on disability. Each of us, as realtors, as business leaders, or leaders in our local, state, and national associations, have a role to play in this commemoration. Today, we're leading efforts to expand fair housing protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity. We must strive, together with our partners, to define how to bring about a market that's truly open and provides equal housing opportunities.
Okay, we can go to the next slide.
All commemorating the fair.
Okay, so that was what the National Association of Realtors is presenting as far as the Fair Housing Act and the information they're providing and supporting basically how HUD has put these initiatives in place to make sure that housing is available to all individuals. The next part of this is just some of the funding that is available, and I wanted to point out in our area, the funds that our state is able to draw down, even down on the city level, what the city is, the different cities in our state are drawing down as far as the community development block grant, the recovery housing program, the home investment partnership. All of these are funding that, as you can see, this is money that our city and surrounding areas received this year, which is a significant amount. As we can see, the state got $41 million, and this is how it is divvied up amongst, and again, our state representatives and our city, our local representatives, they applied for these fundings, and that's how they were able to receive this. Next slide. This one specifically, Albany is not on this one, but this is a continuation of the first one as to the funding that the counties and the different cities received as well. Okay. So HUD also likes to address the initiative of unsheltered and rural homelessness. Some people think that just because we don't see the homelessness in our area, that it does not exist. It exists. It is a very serious situation that we are dealing with in this area. And HUD has provided, if you can click on the slide there, HUD has provided funding to a voucher actually for our particular area. And if you can click on the slide, it'll show us exactly how much and where our city falls in this particular ranking. If you scroll down to the bottom, there is a link there that says a full list of, yes, that one. And of course, we got to get specific to our area. You can scroll down to Georgia. And there we are right there. Our Department of Housing, Housing Authority, the City of Albany here, they did receive funding, as you can see, for that homelessness initiative. So we do have funds available. That's why I wanted to point this out. Funds are available. The resources will be divvied up. We just have to know how to get in touch with the people who these funds are going directly to and the programs that these funds are going to. Okay. Next slide. This is our community development block grant funding for public service grants. And if you can click on this link, it'll show us how to get to this information. This is where the city of Albany has posted this on their website as to how to get to this particular program. And then of course it says capacity building request for proposal is ongoing. Until they run out of the funds, they're going to keep this site open. And let's just click on that first link so I can show the type of what they're looking for. This particular program there, if you scroll down, it has the actual, it's a technical assistant grant, and they basically want individuals to come in and teach pretty much like we're doing here, what we did with this workshop. These are some of the topics that they're expecting to be taught for these programs. And you can apply at any time. Their information is there, and we'll be able to provide information in the link afterwards, how you can get in contact with these people if you're interested in receiving funds or if you're interested in applying for the grant itself. Okay. So that's a little bit about what HUD does in its totality, and not just housing per se. It provides, again, economic development, stability for different communities who might be underrepresented, okay? So here are a few questions that I normally get when people ask me about, you know, what as it pertains to HUD homes. Everyone thinks there's a stigma almost sometimes on HUD homes, but there isn't a stigma. The only thing, what makes a property a HUD home is it is purchased using funding from the HUD program. That's the only thing that makes it technically a HUD home. So these are not homes that have been damaged or like some people think they're deeply discounted. No, HUD homes can be in any neighborhood. They're not to a particular part of town or particular subdivision. They can be anywhere. So let's look at some of these frequently asked questions in regards to the HUD program. Can HUD help me buy a home if I don't have much money? That's a question that I get most often. And the answer is yes. HUD will help. They have certain programs that will help you with your down payment assistance. For example, if you go to their website, and we'll go on the next slide to their website. If we go to their website, it will show us how to apply for a property that is considered a HUD property, and you won't have to put any money down. That's one of the programs. So you're saving that 3.5%. So say for instance, it's a house that costs $100,000. You're saving that $3,500 that you have to put in for a down payment by going this route. So on the HUD website, they recommend that you go to the HUD site and click on Home Buyer's Kit. And that's a plethora of information. We're going to look at that on the next slide, where you're able to go through and it gives you questions that you should answer, or even it gives you a list of housing counselors. And we do have housing counselors in this area. If you can click on the blue link, I'll show you how to find that. Okay, so if you would like to, you have the housing counseling agency, and you can click that link. And I think there are 2 certified counselors here in Albany. Okay, well, is it okay? Okay, we don't have to leave, but it will give you their information if you're interested in having like a professional home buying session, and you want to have that one-on-one experience with the counselor. You can go there and they will give you that information that you need. Okay, so we're looking at, I think when you scroll down, you have to put in your city and state. Yes. Okay. All right, so the number one is the NID, which is a class that I personally attended myself. But again, there are others here in this area, not just Albany. As you can see, Cordele, Columbus, they have other areas as well. So if homeownership is something that you would like to achieve, you can click on this link here, and that will give the information on how to have that home buyer counseling session with that counselor in regards to home buying. And that person will connect you with the lender, or if you're not quite ready, they will also help you with credit counseling as well. So, and it's a great resource and it's free. Okay. So again, HUD provides funding for this program in order to be able to pay these individuals to provide this service. So take advantage of that opportunity. Okay. Back to our slide. Next slide. And this is number 3 is a good idea as well. Call your local Office of Housing and Community Development or your mayor's office to see if there are any local home buying programs that are available. So there are resources out there. We just have to ask. Okay. Next slide. How can I buy a HUD home? So if you click on the link there, there is a website. It's called HUDhomestore.com. And if you scroll down to the bottom, or if you would like to create a profile, you can go and just put the city and state that you're interested in. Again, this is HUD properties throughout the United States. So if you go in and put in a particular city, it'll alert you. If you set a profile, it'll alert you at any time a HUD property hits. Now, HUD properties are popular. So it's best that when you go into this search, like right now, there aren't a lot of properties in Albany that are HUD properties, because when they do hit, they're gone immediately. So try Terrell County. I know that there's one there now, Terrell County. Yeah, there's one there now. Okay, so if you scroll down and click on the blue property case number, that once you click on that, it'll give you information on how to contact the realtor, or even so much so it tells you about the amenities of the property. It gives you an addendum to let you know that this property has been inspected by HUD. It's called a property. You can click on addendum, and there's a property condition report, and it'll let you know exactly what's going on the property. So that's the extra step that HUD does to help you know exactly what you're purchasing. And that's why I do like to purchase HUD properties. Also, the FHA 100 down program, that's the other program that HUD provides where you don't have to put the full down payment down. So that's on the different HUD properties. You'll see that link on the HUD property so you can get information for that. Okay, next slide. Okay, how do I know if I qualify for a mortgage? A lot of people like to jump the gun and just kind of go out and start shopping without even exploring the topic of if I'm even qualified to purchase the home. So this is an important step, and we'll talk about it more in the latter slides. But as this states, there are different kinds of mortgages available, and you have to go through a lender to get qualified. Most of the lenders have a standard credit score, and we'll talk about that a bit more as well. But you want to get the loan that fits your situation in regards to down payment, whether we're doing a 15-year or a 30-year. That's important, and that housing counselor will be able to speak on those situations to let you know, to help you discover which one is best for you. Next slide. Okay, who do I talk to about an FHA mortgage? Like I said, FHA, 85% of the borrowers who get loans, they will go the FHA route. And you can go to a HUD approved lender and ask them about FHA mortgages, and they can give you the information on the requirements and what you have to have, the documentation that you have to have. Okay. The next question that I get is about manufactured homes. As you know, mobile homes are common in the rural areas. Next slide. And these are some of the requirements for a rural home. If you look at the purple banner there, it says that you can purchase a manufactured home with an FHA loan. Some of the requirements are that it has to be larger than 400 square feet. It has to be constructed after 1976, and it must be titled into real property. It can no longer, of course, mobile homes come with tags as far as like motor vehicle tags, because at one point they were a motor vehicle. You have to get them converted over to real property. So in order for it to qualify for FHA loan, these are some of the conditions that have to be met. But you can use the FHA loan to purchase a mobile home. Okay, and it must have a permanent foundation, which is one of the most important things. Must have a permanent foundation. All right, next slide. All right. So as far as buying a home, now that we know what HUD is and what they provide us with and their whole purpose in our government and how they work for us, we're not going to talk about the home buying process itself. Okay. Buying a home can be one of the most exciting things ever, most exciting things, and most stressful at the same time. The most important part of your home ownership journey is having I call it having your team together. You want to make sure you have everyone that you need on your journey to make your journey a successful one. Okay, next slide. There are 7 steps. Everyone has their own process, but there are 7 solid steps that everyone will experience in their home buying process. Next slide. These are the 7 steps. Number 1, having that consultation, which is very important. Next slide. The consultation really sets the tone as a buyer, and it helps you to understand, number 1, what are you looking for? Who is going to help me, and how do I get there? Okay. First step is to have a buyer's agent. There are 2 types of agent: the buyer's agent, who represents the buyers, and the seller's agent, which is the listing agent. 2 separate types. And the misnomer in all of this, or the misconception, is that you have to go with the person on the sign. Well, that's not necessarily true. The person on the sign is already representing the person who owns the home. So as a owner, as a buyer, we encourage you to get your own representative so that you can make sure that your interests are being represented as well, because the seller has their listing agent that is representing their interests. Now, it's not a requirement that you have to go with another agent. You can have what we call a dual agent. A dual agent can represent both sides. But in fair representation, we like to encourage, especially first-time home buyers who may not know the ropes or who aren't quite familiar with the process, we really highly encourage them to have their own agent. Next slide. Okay, so another part, the benefits of working with the buyer's agent, these are going to come through on the transition. Okay, our buyer's agent here, they will definitely help you find a home. They will help you to evaluate the pricing to make sure that you're paying a fair market price for the property. They'll help negotiate the offers, repairs, anything in addition that you want before closing, I should say, or some things that you want the seller to do. And they will also basically handhold you through the process itself. Like I said, buying a home can be like this, up and down, up and down. That agent is going to help manage those expectations throughout the process and make sure you get to the closing table. Next slide. One thing that most people don't know about buyer's agent, you don't pay the fee or the commission of the buyer's agent. That's something that the seller does. So when the seller lists the house with that particular agent, they've already negotiated the fee that they're going to pay. So the buyer's agent is at no cost to you. So that's why it makes good sense to go ahead and obtain a buyer's agent that will work on your behalf and make sure that your interests are represented, especially if it's free. Next slide. Okay, so some of the things again that they'll help you do is determine your needs. Again, location, location, location. You want to make sure that you're in an area that you're comfortable with, an area that might need to be close to your job or close to your school, your kid's school, and that agent is going to help find that perfect location for you. Also, do you require a garage? Do you require 1,000 square feet, or do you need 3,000 square feet? Those are things that your buyer's agent will take into consideration for you. Next slide. Loan pre-approval. Back to what we were saying in the previous loans, as far as the different types of loans, it's always important to know what types of loans am I eligible for, and also how much house can I afford. The bank will tell you exactly what you can afford on paper, but it's up to you to decide, how does this fit in my budget? You don't want to be house poor. You don't, just because the bank say, oh, Miss Susie, you can afford $2,200 a month, but Miss Susie may have spending habits that require that she spend a certain amount of money every week that may not be conducive to have a $2,200 mortgage. So I always encourage my clients, sit down and do your own budget. Look how much that you can afford for your housing. And typically they like to say 35% of your take home pay. That's the number that they say that you should allow for housing. So if that's manageable for you, then of course that loan will work. But if it doesn't, it's okay to tell your lender, okay, yes, I might be $2,200 on paper, but the way my spending habits or the way my travel habits are lined up, I need to probably just stick with $1,100 a month or $1,000 a month, and be okay with speaking up for yourself and advocating for yourself to say that, because of course those loan officers are going to try to get you the highest amount that they can, which is their job. Okay, no, that's just what they do. So make sure you know how much can you afford even before going to the bank, because you have done your budget and you know what's there. Next slide. The pre-approval. A lot of people will jump in the car, they get online, see Zillow, and say, oh, I want to go see the house, let me call the realtor. Well, that's not always the first step you should take. You should always go to the lender first and get the pre-approval, because the pre-approval means that you have gone to the lender, you've turned in, you've had your income verified, whether it's with tax returns or your pay stub, and you've also had your employment verified, meaning they've called and spoken with your employer and say, okay, yes, Miss Susie has been on her job for at least 2 years, and she's in good standing with our company right now. That's what the pre-approval does. So that makes your offer stronger, because that seller says, okay, well, this person has at least gone to the bank versus this person over here who's interested, and they're just expressing their interest. They have not gone to the bank. So the pre-approved buyer has more chances of getting their offer accepted than the person who doesn't. Okay, next slide. These are two of our preferred lenders that we work very closely with here in this area. Again, they're licensed in the state just like we are, so they can go anywhere in the state of Georgia, or even outside of the state of Georgia. But these lenders, I like these lenders because they don't tell my clients no. It might not be a not right now, but it's never no. And they take their time, tell my clients what needs to be done to get to the place that they can purchase. So it's important that you get with the lender that's just not going to just give you the red X and just mark you off and say, no, don't ever call me again. You need that lender to say, okay, maybe not this month, but maybe in 2 more months, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll be able to purchase. So it's important that you get with the lender that's going to help you, because again, that's a part of having that person on your team and on your home ownership journey. Next slide. Okay, so this is the favorite part of everyone, searching for a home. And there are different ways that you can search for a home. We click next slide. We skip one. Okay, so the MLS service, which is the most common place to find homes available for sale. The MLS service is where most agents put their houses into the system, and that particular service feeds out to sites like Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, and all those other websites. So that's the main source to get the real estate homes that are available. However, it's not the only source, because everyone does not put their listings in the MLS system. So don't feel like, oh, it's not coming up today. Just because it's not coming up on the MLS, you might have to dig a little bit deeper, because you have to sell by owners. You have what they call on here pocket listings. Those are sellers who say, hey, I want to sell my house, but don't let everybody know I'm trying to sell my house. And that might be for confidential reasons that they're that way. You can also hear about new home construction developments. Like myself, I have a new construction development going up in Dawson here within the next 30 days. So we're going to start advertising and rolling that information out here soon. But of course, if you're not on this slide, on this presentation, you won't know about that, because we have not fully advertised it yet. So those are different developments that are coming up, if you see the trees, I said, if you see the trees being knocked down, just know that it's a possibility that that is possible for residential new construction properties there. Also, the internet. You can do random searches, Craigslist and other areas like that that provide information as far as mainly with for sale by owners. They go to those sites to advertise their information. Also, your newspaper classified. I know a lot of people don't read the newspaper like that, but believe it or not, a lot of homeowners in rural areas do post property in the classified section of the newspaper. And fortunately, like the Albany Herald, you can click on classified and it says real estate specifically for sale or real estate for lease, and it'll give you that information as well. Okay. Now, short sales. Let me talk a little bit about short sales. Short sales aren't really advertised. Short sales are basically a situation where the owner owes the bank, say, let's use like small numbers, 50,000 on it, but they can't afford to pay the rest of their mortgage. So what they do is find a buyer, maybe from word of mouth or just talking to somebody. They find a buyer and say, hey, if you're interested in my house, I'll negotiate with the bank for you and see if they would take a short on the balance that I owe on my property. So short sales basically a short on the money, not the process, short on the money. So in that situation, if that person owes 50,000, they have Mr. Buyer over here that can pay 30,000, they can go to their lender and ask them would they take a short on the balance. Now, it sounds good in theory. However, that bank wants Mr. Owner to prove every reason as to why he cannot pay that 50,000. So it is a very heavily documented process because you have to prove to the bank that you can no longer pay. So even though it's short on the money and it's advantageous for that buyer, it can be cumbersome, the process itself, in order to get through the short sale. And of course, everyone knows about bank-owned and foreclosure properties because I get calls all the time about them. And that's just where an owner could no longer pay at all, and they've either been evicted from the property or they just left or abandoned the property, and that bank has come back and taken ownership of that asset and they now own it. That's why it's called a bank-owned property. Okay, next slide. All right, so we said searching for homes. So now that we've searched for them and found our list, now it's time to view a home. And viewing the homes is only a licensed agent can show you properties. Now, what I like to tell my clients, when we're going out, pick your top 5. In this market, there is a limited amount of inventory available. So we don't have time to go out and look at 20 properties and make a decision on the 20. Let's go with the top 5. And if the top 5 does not work, then we'll move to the next set. So this is what narrowing your search does. And it helps you to focus in on those houses that you really, really like. Okay. Next slide. Okay. What to do, another important thing is what to do if you're approached by another agent. When you're doing or when you're out searching, you may come across an open house. You may see flags out on a Saturday afternoon saying open house, come here, come in. You're able to go and attend those open houses. However, proper etiquette is to let that particular agent know, hey, I'm represented by so and so and so, but I still would like to see the property. And you're welcome to do that because you have, number one, let that agent know that you are represented, or if you were not represented, that might be an opportunity for you to build a relationship with that particular agent on site. So that's the purpose of an open house, for you to be able to freely see the property with no commitment or anything like that. You just kind of, those are for my casual buyers who may not really be interested like today to buy a house, but it's on their radar. So those open house situations are really good opportunities. No pressure. You're just going in, kind of viewing the homes, and that's a good time to really just see or put together your list of your likes and dislikes about houses, because you might see some amenities that are of interest. Next slide. Developing a pricing strategy. Once you get into bidding for a house, when it's time for you to decide, okay, this is the house for me, it's time for you to go ahead and develop your pricing strategy to decide, okay, am I going to offer a full asking price, or am I going to ask them to come down 10, $5,000 off the sales price. Mostly that some buyers don't consider, though, it's difficult to ask a seller to come down off the price and pay closing costs, pay for any repairs or anything like that. So that's why it's important to go into every situation where you have a pricing strategy. Okay, and that pricing strategy, that your realtor can help you develop that pricing strategy, and also they're going to help you to stick to your budget. It's tempting to go over and see some of the things that you like in the house and say, well, I guess I can go up $10,000 more dollars or $20,000 more dollars, but would that really work to your advantage in the end? Would you end up pricing yourself out of the situation? So that's something that you want to consider. Next slide. Now, this slide is showing us how you compare houses to, maybe it's a house that you're interested in. How do you look for comparable sales when it's time to price a house? Now, you always want to buy in the neighborhood where there's activity going on. Maybe something has been sold, hopefully in the last 6 months, and that'll let you know what the value is in the area, because you never know, your situation might change. You might need to sell. You're no longer on the buyer side, you're now on the selling side. So you always want to know what's going on in my area. Are the values declining? Are they increasing? So this slide shows us how these houses are all within a 1 mile radius of each other. And as you can see, the prices are all within a roughly about $20,000 of each other, 20 to 25,000. So that's important when if I were to select one of these homes and I see a house that's priced at $275 that's in this area with these houses, I know that that house is overpriced. So that's something that you want to consider in your pricing strategy. What are the recent sales in the area? Okay, next slide. All right, so writing and negotiating an offer. This is my favorite part of selling real estate. I love to negotiate. So next slide. It's important that you have someone that can help you to negotiate, because it can literally make or break the deal, okay? Some of the things you want to consider: the purchase price. What is the house listed for? You know, you want a good buy that is also you want a good offer that is also attractive to the seller. Yes, you want it to be advantageous for you, but you don't want to get an absolute no from the seller. So you have to kind of negotiate or bargain with the seller on some concessions to get what you want. You also want to know what's included. Am I going to get a refrigerator? Am I getting a washer and dryer? Am I getting the shed out back? Because those things are of value. So that's something to consider. Also, how much will my earnest money be? The earnest money is the money that you put down in good faith, saying, hey, Mr. Seller, this is the money I'm putting down. I want your house. Take this house off the market. Give me 30 days. Let me do what I got to do, and I'm going to buy it. So, and if anything falls apart, then the seller does get that earnest money in some cases. So you want to make sure that your offer has these components in it. Also, at the bottom, toward the bottom, a financing contingency. If my loan doesn't go through, Mr. Seller, in 30 days, and I give you enough notice on day 25, can I terminate the deal to get my money back? Because, of course, not all loans go through, unfortunately, but you want to make sure you're in a situation where if it doesn't go through on something that's not your fault, or the lender, maybe they find something wrong with your employment, they find something wrong with your income, and it's just not something that's your fault, then you do have the right to get your earnest money back. Also, a home warranty. Home warranties are important because we have a lot of people that are first-time home buyers. They're coming from tenant situations where they're programmed to call the landlord or call the property manager when something happens. So that home warranty provides that buffer for at least a year or two to allow them to get acclimated to preparing themselves to be able to do those small repairs, or to be able to call the AC company if the air conditioner goes out in the summertime on a 102-degree day. Okay, the last thing too is the appraisal condition. The government is in favor of the consumer. So they're going to make sure there are things in place where the consumer is not taken advantage of. And one of them is in the value of homes. So that's why you have an unbiased party to come out and say, hey, this property is worth X amount of dollars, and not just what the seller is saying that it's worth. And that's how the consumer is protected. They're making sure that, if it does not appraise for this contract agreement of $200,000 that we have, and maybe it appraised for $175,000, the buyer is still not obligated to pay the 200, then they can come down, get the seller to come down to the market value of 175. So that's what that appraisal contingency does. Okay. So those are some important factors of when you have a buyer's agent, they're going to negotiate those things on your behalf. All right, next slide. All right, so negotiating the price, these are the different terms that you'll see once you submit that offer and your agent has everything submitted for you. They're going to tell you, okay, Mr. Seller said, yes, we're going to move forward. Go ahead and put your earnest money down because your offer has been accepted. Or it's going to be a hard no, we're not going to do it. The seller says, no way, it's not going to work for us. Or the seller may say, I like this part of your offer, or I like this part, but let's adjust this part. This is what I accept. And that's a counter offer when they'll send something back to you. Okay. So next slide. Managing the transaction through closing. So this is the last step in the process that your realtor will make sure that you at least get to the closing table. That's our ultimate. We have tunnel vision when it comes to this. The only thing we see is getting to the closing table. Next slide. Managing transactions. So they will also receive the seller's disclosures for you. This is something toward the end of the process. Those disclosures will give you more information about the property. Basically, how old is the roof? How old is the plumbing? This is important information because it's basically the person who owns the property is letting you know exactly what the condition of the property is from their perspective. And this is a legally binding document. This is a document that the sellers have to sign in good faith saying, hey, this is my recognition of as far as the roof, the plumbing, electrical, and all of that. And they're giving you that information basically about their property. Also, if it's a rental property or an investment property for that particular owner, they're going to hand over those leases, the property management information. What does it cost them each month to run the property? They're going to hand all of those deposits, security deposits over as well, along with the tenant's information, so you can take it over as the new owner. If the property is in a homeowners association, the seller is going to give you that information about the covenants and the restrictions. How much does it cost to pay the monthly or the annual assessment? Maybe they have a gate outside the neighborhood that's a community property that everyone has to pitch in and pay for. They're going to let you know that at that time. Also, you're going to have the title insurance to show what are the easements. Maybe the city has a 5-foot easement so they can access something in the back of the property. All of that is important information that realtor is going to give you toward the end of closing to make sure that you have all the information that you need. Next slide. Due diligence. This is one important step that I've in the past year or so, or I would say when we had a hot market and everything was going, some people started skipping this very important step. And the due diligence is basically a test drive. The test drive of the property to let you know, okay, you could come in, bring Mr. Plumber, bring Mr. Electrician, Mr. Home Inspector, anybody who wants to come in and basically test drive this property for you so you can know exactly the condition that you're going in. Also asking about the well, when was the last time the well was pumped out? That's a good one that some people miss because a lot of properties are on the city sewer, but you have properties out in the county that have well and septic. So it's important to know when was the last time was it pumped out? Because some properties, the well or the septic might be working overtime. You're only supposed to have so many bedrooms per septic tank. So if it's been overworked, then we know that it's probably time for that system to be pumped out. Or even with the well, we're in the South and we're on the water table. So does the water table drop when it gets dry in the summertime and the rain doesn't come in? Does the well dry up? Do you have to dig it a little bit deeper? Those are questions that your realtor is going to help you discover. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so your right to cancel or resolve objections. You, as a buyer, you do have the right to terminate your contract based on the information that you receive. If you don't like the fact that the roof is 20 years old, you wanted a 3-year roof, then you have the right to terminate. Now, in some situations, you cannot terminate without penalty. So it's important to know that, hey, am I within my due diligence period, my 10-day test drive period? Or is this 21 days out and it's almost time for closing and I've just made up my mind I don't want the house, then I might be penalized. I'm going to lose that earnest money that I put down in the beginning. But that's a part of the process that your buyer's agent is going to help you manage those dates as well. Okay, next slide. Yes, wells do also need drainage pipe replaced. Yes, that is correct. It's also it's a drain field around the septic tank and it's piping around the wells that have to be checked as well. Sometimes you have to go in and replace if they're rusted, if they're using the copper pipes instead of the new PVC piping, you have to get that changed out as well. So remaining contingencies and financing, like I said, you have that appraisal contingency to make sure that you're paying market value for that property. You have the FHA, a conventional loan exhibit that says that, hey, if this client does not get financing within 21 days or 30 days, then they're entitled to getting their funding back. So it's important that you stick to those contingencies and those dates and deadlines so that you won't be penalized, okay? Next slide. Closing day. Closing day is the day that everyone looks forward to, okay? Not only do agents, not only do the agents look forward to it for getting a check, but they're also excited towards being able to close that chapter because they checked that box off and done everything they were supposed to do to get that client to the table so they can realize their dream of home ownership or their dream of managing properties or owning investment properties for wealth building purposes. So closing takes place usually at an attorney's office. In Georgia, we are an attorney state. Some states allow you to go to what we call a title company, but in Georgia, we are an attorney state. You have to transfer title or deeds in an attorney's office, and the attorney has to go and research the deed to make sure that there aren't any what we call clouds on the title. And that's important because you don't want to inherit anything from previous owners, or you don't want to inherit any bad situations that may come up later on. So that's the purpose of doing a title search. And also to make sure there aren't any liens, Dr. Monds, yes, any liens on the property, because once you own the property, the liens follow the property, not the owners. So it's important to make sure you're free and clear of title. So that's where title insurance comes in. The title insurance comes in and ensures over what the attorney has found and said, hey, if anything was to come up, we're going to cover that because you have title insurance. It's very important. So if your attorney asks you, do you want title insurance? That's the first thing you need to say yes to, because it's even though it's kind of, well, I wouldn't say it's expensive. There is a fee for it, but it's one of the best investments you'll make for a property that you're going to own for however long you're going to own it. It's important. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So that wraps, I almost just a little bit over, but that wraps my presentation at this time. This is my contact information. I would love to answer any additional questions. This is the best way to reach me, either on social media or my number is there as well. I'm always welcoming new clients. I love to work with first-time homeowners or sellers who are just deciding to sell their properties. And I look forward to speaking with you all individually. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Monds.
Let's give Rashonda a round of applause. What an amazing presentation. We appreciate you. That was fantastic. And while we recognize that this is being recorded, we look forward to being able to share it out with our campus and with our community in not only in Albany, but certainly in Southwest Georgia. I'm going to stop the record. And again, thank you, Rashonda Muldrow, for a dynamic presentation. This was awesome. I get so fired up when I hear you talking about real estate, and I am certain that those other persons who will watch the recording will enjoy it as well. Those of you who came, we thank you for your time, your attention, and certainly your ability to engage with us. Thank you for Rashonda, you're getting all kinds of applause in the chat. And if you would be so kind, if you haven't done so already, just simply place the city and state where you are located. We know we have a small audience, but again, a small audience with a wide reach is really important for us to know exactly where you're located. And we appreciate you coming. We thank you again, and we will hope that you have a fantastic evening, and we appreciate you. I'm going to stop the recording now.